In the frozen silence of Deer Creek Lake, Utah, a child's desperate whisper shattered a billionaire's carefully ordered world. Don't let them find me. They want to bury me. 8-year-old Lily Miller was officially dead, her remains reportedly found in the ashes of a suspicious fire. Yet somehow she stood trembling in Ethan Caldwell's cabin, clutching a photograph of his deceased sister and uttering 6 words that would change everything. I saw my own funeral. What connects a reclusive tech billionaire to an orphaned child with unexplainable abilities? Why did Ethan's sister Clara leave cryptic warnings before her accidental death? As powerful men hunt them through the Utah wilderness, Ethan must unravel a conspiracy of pharmaceutical experiments, disappeared children, and abilities that defy scientific explanation. Some secrets are buried for a reason, and some lights refuse to be extinguished. Follow our channel for more heart-stopping stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Like and comment to let us know where you're watching from, and don't miss a single moment of this emotional journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about sacrifice, survival, and seeing what others try to hide. Ice was falling from the sky over Deer Creek Lake, Utah. On the shores of the frozen lake, an isolated cabin glowed under the pale morning light. Inside, Ethan Caldwell, 27-year-old reclusive billionaire still wearing the blue coat his sister never returned to collect, was lighting the fireplace when he heard a muffled sound coming from the locked back room. A sound that shouldn't exist there. A child's sob. Crying, trying to be silent, like someone who had learned to suffer in hiding. He walked slowly across the creaking floorboards, each step echoing as if the world was holding its breath with him. The cold doorknob trembled under his hand. As he opened the door, his eyes froze. A little girl about 8 years old, huddled behind the closet, with dirt-stained knees, lips purple from cold, and an old backpack clutched to her chest. She raised her tear-stained face and with a broken, hoarse voice whispered, "Don't let them find me. They want to bury me." Time stopped. Ethan felt his heart plummet, just like when he'd received news of his sister's death 3 years ago. The same kind of coldness piercing his soul. The girl shuddered and covered her face as if expecting a blow or shout. Without thinking, he took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. The fireplace crackled in the background, but the room seemed to grow even colder. And then she added, looking at him with fear so pure it tore through the air, "I saw my own funeral." Ethan stood motionless, his breath caught in his throat. What was he supposed to do with those words? With this child? His perfectly ordered world, carefully constructed after Clara's death, was crumbling under the weight of those 6 words. "What's your name?" he finally managed to ask, kneeling down to her level, careful to keep his distance. She clutched his coat tighter. "Lily," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. "Lily Miller." "Lily," he repeated. "How did you get in here?" She glanced at the window, its lock broken from the outside. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I was so cold. I didn't think anyone was here." Her small frame trembled despite the coat. Ethan's mind raced. This cabin was 30 miles from the nearest town, accessible only by a private road that had been nearly impassable since the snowstorm 3 days ago. How could a child have made it here alone? "Where are your parents, Lily?" he asked, trying to keep his voice gentle. Her eyes darkened. "Gone. Like yours." The statement hit him like a physical blow. Nobody here knew about his parents' accident when he was 12. Nobody except his PR team and Clara, who was gone now too. "I should call someone," he said, reaching for his phone. "You need help." Terror flashed across her face. She scrambled backward until she hit the wall. "No, please, they'll find me. They think I'm dead and I need to stay dead." Ethan paused, finger hovering over the emergency call button. Every rational instinct told him to call the police. A lost child. Possible abuse. Delusions. This was a job for professionals, not a tech entrepreneur who'd barely spoken to another human being in months. But something in her eyes, that raw, primal fear, made him hesitate. "Who are they, Lily?" he asked carefully. She swallowed hard. "The people at Sunnyside. The ones who said they'd take care of me. Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. The ones who started the fire. A chill ran through him that had nothing to do with the Utah winter. Ethan set his phone down, screen dark. "When did you last eat?" he asked instead. Relief flooded her face. "Yesterday morning. I found berries." "Berries? In January?" His alarm grew. She shrugged, a strangely adult gesture on such a young face. "They were dried up. But better than nothing." Ethan stood, decision made. "Wait here. I'm going to make you something warm to eat, and then we'll figure this out. Okay?" She nodded, wary but hopeful. In the kitchen, Ethan's hands shook as he heated soup. What was he doing? Harboring a runaway child? Not calling authorities? This could ruin him. The board had already tried to force him out after Clara's death sent him spiraling, claiming his emotional instability made him unfit to lead Caldwell Technologies. If this got out, the TV in the living room was on low volume, local news droning in the background. As Ethan stirred the soup, a headline caught his attention. "Tragic fire at Sunnyside Children's Home claims young life." He turned up the volume. Authorities confirm one fatality in the blaze that destroyed the east wing of Sunnyside Children's Home last night. 8-year-old Lily Miller is presumed dead, after remains were found in what was her bedroom. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. The spoon clattered against the pot. Ethan stared at the screen in disbelief as they showed a school photo of a smiling girl with auburn hair and a missing front tooth. The same girl huddled in his spare bedroom wearing his coat. A girl who was officially dead. He turned to find Lily standing in the doorway, eyes fixed on the television, face pale as the snow outside. "You see?" she whispered. "They buried me already." Ethan's mind raced. Either this child was deeply troubled or something truly sinister was happening. The rational decision would be to call the police immediately. Yet something stopped him. Perhaps the memory of how quickly Clara's death was ruled an accident despite her cryptic texts in the days before. "How did you know to come here?" he asked, voice barely steady. Lily's hand disappeared into the pocket of his coat, pulling out a folded photograph. She held it out to him, fingers trembling. Ethan took it, unfolding the worn paper. His blood turned to ice. There in the photo stood Clara, his Clara, with her arm around a younger Lily, both smiling, both alive. And in Clara's handwriting across the bottom, "When the world falls, find Ethan at the lake. He'll protect what matters." Ethan's legs gave way as he sank to the floor, the photo clutched in his shaking hands. The soup boiled over, forgotten. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering tracks, burying secrets as Lily watched him with eyes far too old for her years. "Your sister," she said softly. She knew they were coming for her too. Ethan's hands wouldn't stop shaking. The photograph lay on the kitchen counter, Clara's handwriting accusing him with every loop and curve. How had he not known? His sister, his brilliant, compassionate sister, had been involved with this child somehow. And now both were supposedly dead, except one was sitting at his dining table, spooning soup into her mouth with mechanical precision. "Slow down," he said softly, watching Lily eat as if someone might snatch the bowl away any second. "It's not going anywhere." She paused, then deliberately slowed her movements, though her eyes remained fixed on the food. The oversized blue coat, Clara's favorite, hung from her small frame like a deflated balloon. In the warm light of the cabin, Ethan could see details he'd missed before. A jagged scar along her hairline, barely visible beneath her auburn bangs, fingernails bitten to the quick, and most disturbing, thin, linear scars on her wrists that disappeared beneath the coat sleeves. "How did you know my sister?" he asked finally. Lily set down her spoon, suddenly wary. "Miss Clara was nice to me. She visited Sunnyside every Thursday with books. Real books, not the baby ones they gave us." She worked at the children's home? This didn't make sense. Clara had been a research scientist at Caldwell Technologies, specializing in pharmaceutical development. "No." Lily's voice dropped. She came to see Dr. Mercer. They argued a lot. Dr. Richard Mercer. Ethan recognized the name immediately. Chief of Research at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, Clara's direct supervisor and a man Ethan had never trusted, despite his impressive credentials. After Clara's death, a single-car accident on a clear night, Mercer had been devastatingly professional in his condolences. "Did she tell you to find me? If something happened?" His throat tightened around the words. Lily nodded, glancing toward the window where darkness was now falling. "She said if the bad dreams came true, I should run to the lake house. That you'd be here." Her small hand disappeared into the coat pocket again, emerging with a tarnished brass key. "She gave me this." Ethan recognized it instantly, the key to Clara's private lab storage at Caldwell Technologies, the one he'd been told was lost in the accident. His phone buzzed on the counter. Adam Barrett, his head of security, was calling. Again, the fifth call in 2 hours. Ethan had been ignoring them all. "I should call the police," he said, more to himself than to Lily. I can't just..." Terror flashed across Lily's face. "They're in on it," she hissed, pushing back from the table so violently her chair nearly toppled. "Why do you think they said I was dead? They found someone else to burn." The implication was too horrible to consider, but the alternative, that this traumatized child was spinning elaborate delusions, seemed increasingly unlikely given the physical evidence in his hands. "Okay," he said, raising his palms in a calming gesture. "No police, not yet. But I need to understand what's happening, Lily. I need you to tell me everything." She retreated to the living room window, peering through the curtains at the snow-covered landscape. "They'll come looking," she whispered. "They always do." "Who?" "The men in suits. They took Jessie last month. Said she was going to a new family, but she wasn't." Her small hand pressed against the glass, leaving a ghostly impression. "Miss Clara found out where they really take us. That's why they hurt her car." The room seemed to tilt. Clara's accident. The brake lines mysteriously failing on her meticulously maintained vehicle. The police report declaring no foul play. The way her laptop and research notes had vanished from the scene. The TV still murmured in the background. The news had moved on from the Sunnyside fire, now discussing weekend weather forecasts. Ethan grabbed the remote, flipping to another local channel. Nothing. Another. Finally, on the county public access channel, he found a reporter standing in front of the smoldering remains of what had once been the east wing of Sunnyside Children's Home. Tragic loss of 8-year-old Lily Miller in last night's blaze. Director Margaret Whitman has declined to comment on allegations from a former employee that fire safety protocols at the facility were inadequate. Meanwhile, state regulators are... Ethan muted the TV as Lily returned to the kitchen table, her small face a mask of confusion and fear. "The body," she said quietly. "Whose body did they find?" He had no answer for her. Instead, he asked, "Why does Dr. Mercer visit Sunnyside? What does he do there?" Lily's fingers traced patterns on the wooden table. "He gives us special medicine, says it's vitamins, but it makes my head feel funny. Some kids get really sick. Then they go away." A horrible suspicion began forming in Ethan's mind. Clara's research had focused on neurological pharmaceuticals, treatments for degenerative diseases. Had she discovered something? Was Mercer using the children as test subjects? His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Adam Barrett, but a text from an unknown number. "Cameras show you're at the lake house. Stay there. We need to talk about Clara. Trust no one. We'll contact soon. M." Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. Who was M? And how did they know he was here? A sudden crunch of tires on snow made them both freeze. Headlights swept across the cabin windows as a vehicle pulled into the long driveway. "Hide," Ethan whispered urgently. "In the cellar. There's a door behind the bookcase in the study. Go now." Lily vanished, silent as a ghost, while Ethan composed himself. He quickly tucked the photograph and key into his pocket and opened his laptop, attempting to look casually engaged in work. Through the window, he could see a county sheriff's cruiser parked outside. A firm knock came at the door. With one final glance toward the study where Lily had disappeared, Ethan made a decision that would forever alter the course of his life. He would lie to protect her. A choice that went against everything he thought he stood for. He opened the door to find Sheriff Dave Hansen, a man he knew only in passing, stamping snow from his boots. "Evening, Mr. Caldwell," Hansen said, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Mind if I come in for a minute? We're doing welfare checks after the storm, and your security company mentioned they've been trying to reach you." As Ethan stepped aside to let the sheriff enter, he caught sight of something in the cruiser, a briefcase with the Caldwell Pharmaceuticals logo emblazoned on the side. And in that moment, he knew with chilling certainty that Lily had been right. The truth was about to burn them all. Sheriff Hansen surveyed the cabin interior with deceptive casualness, his weathered face revealing nothing as his eyes swept the room. Ethan felt every muscle in his body tense, acutely aware of the half-eaten bowl of soup still on the table, the 2 spoons beside the sink, the slight depression in the couch cushion where Lily had sat. "Quite a storm," Hansen commented, removing his hat. Snow melted from his boots onto the hardwood floor. Road to town's barely passable. "Wouldn't have made it up here myself without chains." "I'm well stocked," Ethan replied, fighting to keep his voice even. "Planning to wait it out." The sheriff nodded, eyes lingering on the 2 mugs by the fireplace. "Been having company?" Ethan's mind raced. "Just ghosts," he said, allowing genuine grief to color his tone. It's the anniversary of my sister's accident. 3 years today." Hansen's expression softened slightly. "Sorry about that. Clara was well liked in town." He paused, then added with deliberate casualness, "Shame about that fire at Sunnyside last night. You hear about that?" Every instinct screamed danger. "Caught something on the news," Ethan admitted, gesturing vaguely toward the muted television. "Terrible tragedy." "Indeed," Hansen agreed, eyes sharp despite his relaxed demeanor. "Strange timing, some might say. Your security team reported your alarm system went offline last night. Any issues with your windows or doors?" Cold dread pooled in Ethan's stomach. "Storm knocked out power briefly. System must have glitched during the reset." The lie came easily, too easily. Why would timing matter? Hansen shrugged, his hand resting casually near his holster. "Just an observation. Your sister visited that children's home regularly, didn't she? Before her accident?" The question hit like a physical blow. How did Hansen know that? According to Lily, Clara's visits weren't official. "Did she?" Ethan countered, forcing confusion into his voice. "I wasn't aware." The sheriff's radio crackled to life, saving Ethan from further questioning. A dispatcher's voice reported an accident on Route 40. "Duty calls," Hansen said, replacing his hat. At the door, he paused. "If you notice anything unusual, Mr. Caldwell, any unexpected visitors or disturbances, you call me directly. These mountains can be dangerous for those who don't know them." The threat beneath the warning was unmistakable. When the cruiser's taillights finally disappeared down the snowy drive, Ethan collapsed against the door, his heart hammering wildly. He waited 5 full minutes before whispering, "Lily, you can come out now." The bookshelf in the study moved silently, revealing the small figure clutching Clara's coat around herself like armor. Her eyes were wide with terror. "He's one of them," she whispered, voice trembling. "Sheriff Hansen comes to Sunnyside with Dr. Mercer. He watches the doors when they take kids away." Ethan ran his hands through his hair, mind racing through options that all seemed impossible. Hansen would return, probably with reinforcements. The cabin wasn't safe anymore, but where could they go? His face was too recognizable, his resources too traceable. Any credit card use, any phone call, any appearance in public would alert them. "We need supplies," he decided. "Food, clothes for you, cash. We'll leave tonight." "Where will we go?" Lily asked, her small voice steady despite everything. Ethan had no answer, but he knew they couldn't stay. "Somewhere safe," he promised. hoping it wasn't a lie. He packed quickly: warm clothes, non-perishable food, first aid supplies. He dug out an old backpack of Clara's from the closet for Lily, replacing her tattered one. As he transferred her meager possessions, a sealed envelope fell out, yellowed with age, the paper high quality and thick. It bore a single name in elegant cursive: Clara Caldwell. "What's this?" he asked, holding up the envelope. Lily's expression changed, suddenly guarded. "Miss Clara gave it to me. Said I should only give it to you when you were ready." "Ready for what?" Her eyes, too old, too knowing for a child, met his. "To believe the worst about the people you trust." The envelope felt impossibly heavy in his hands. Ethan slipped it into his pocket unopened, a decision that would haunt his dreams later. Some truths demanded the proper moment. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world draped in pristine white under a clear, star-filled sky. The temperature had plummeted, the cold burning Ethan's lungs as he loaded supplies into his Range Rover. Lily stood in the doorway, Clara's coat hanging past her knees, watching him with a stillness no child should possess. "We need to stop in town," he told her as they pulled away from the cabin. "You'll need to stay hidden. Can you do that?" She nodded, already sliding down in her seat below window level. The trust she placed in him, a stranger connected only through the ghost of his sister, was both touching and terrifying. The small town of Haber City was quiet at 10 p.m., most businesses closed except the 24-hour convenience store attached to the gas station. Ethan parked far from the building's security cameras. "I'll be quick," he promised, tucking a blanket around Lily in the backseat footwell. "If anyone comes near the car, don't make a sound." Inside the store, Ethan grabbed children's clothes, more food, a prepaid phone, and as much cash as the register would allow him to withdraw with his debit card. His last traceable transaction. The teenage clerk barely looked up from her phone, but the older woman restocking shelves watched him with undisguised curiosity. "Stocking up for more snow?" she asked, eyeing his selections. "Just passing through," Ethan replied, forcing a casual smile. "Headed south?" she pressed. "Roads that way are better. North's all ice past Camas." "Thanks for the tip," he said, gathering his purchases. Her eyes lingered on the children's clothes. "Those for your daughter?" "Pretty small." Ethan's pulse quickened. "Niece," he lied. "Birthday surprise." The woman nodded, but her expression remained skeptical. "Terrible business at Sunnyside last night. You hear? Poor little girl died. Had the same color hair as your niece, I'd imagine." The statement was too pointed to be coincidence. Was everyone in this town watching? Reporting back to someone? "I hadn't heard," Ethan managed, paying quickly and escaping to the parking lot. His hands shook as he loaded the purchases into the car. When he opened the back door, Lily was exactly where he'd left her, eyes wide with fear. "The lady with the gray hair," she whispered. "That's Mrs. Landry. She works in the Sunnyside kitchen." Ethan's blood ran cold. He peeled out of the parking lot, checking the rearview mirror compulsively. No cars followed, but the sensation of being watched lingered like ice down his spine. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, taking back roads toward Salt Lake City. The letter in Ethan's pocket seemed to burn against his chest, a physical manifestation of the decision point he'd reached. Turn around, return Lily to authorities, salvage his life and reputation, or drive on into an unknown future as a suspected kidnapper, trusting the cryptic warnings of a child and his dead sister. "I'm sorry," Lily said suddenly from the back seat, her voice small against the darkness. "You shouldn't have to run because of me." Ethan met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "My sister thought you were worth protecting," he said softly. "That's enough for me." As they crested a hill overlooking the valley, the city lights glittering below like fallen stars, Ethan made his choice. Whatever secrets Clara had uncovered, whatever danger Lily represented, he wouldn't abandon her. Not to Mercer, not to Hanson, not to anyone. The unopened letter rested against his heart, a promise and a burden. Whatever truth it contained would have to wait until they found sanctuary in the desert of snow that stretched endlessly before them. Salt Lake City sprawled before them, a grid of light shimmering against the backdrop of snow-covered mountains. Ethan drove carefully through the late-night traffic, hyper-aware of every police car, every traffic camera. The prepaid phone buzzed with news alerts. His absence had been noticed. Reclusive billionaire missing after nearby tragedy, the headlines read, connecting him to the Sunnyside fire with alarming speed. They found refuge in an aging motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that accepted cash and asked no questions. The neon vacancy sign flickered erratically, casting alternating shadows across the parking lot where patches of dirty snow formed miniature mountain ranges. Room 17 smelled of old cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but it had 2 beds and a lock on the door. Lily curled up on the bed farthest from the window, still wrapped in Clara's coat despite the room's oppressive heating. She hadn't spoken since they'd left the mountains, her small face tight with exhaustion and fear. "You should try to sleep," Ethan said, drawing the threadbare curtains closed. "We're safe for tonight." "No one's ever safe," she whispered, the words chilling in their certainty. Miss Clara thought she was safe too. Ethan sat on the edge of the other bed, the ancient springs protesting beneath his weight. The envelope from Lily's backpack remained in his pocket, untouched. Outside, a car door slammed, making them both flinch. "Tell me about Sunnyside," he said quietly. "How long were you there?" Lily's fingers traced patterns on the faded bedspread. 2 years, 4 months, and 11 days, she recited with unnerving precision. "Since my parents' accident." Another car accident. The coincidence was too stark to ignore. "What did Clara do when she visited?" "She brought books. Real books about science and history, not just baby stories. She taught me words." A ghost of a smile crossed Lily's face. "And she asked questions about the medicines, the tests, the special rooms downstairs." "What special rooms?" "Where Dr. Mercer works. Where the children go before they disappear." Her voice dropped to a haunted whisper. "They scream sometimes. At night. Mrs. Whitman says it's just nightmares, but we all know." Ethan's stomach churned. Was it possible? Could Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, his family's company, be conducting illegal experiments on children? It seemed too monstrous, too theatrical to be real, yet Clara had believed it enough to protect Lily, to give her escape instructions. The prepaid phone buzzed again. Ethan had programmed only one number into it, Adam Barrett's. His head of security had been Clara's friend too. If anyone might help them, it was Adam. The text was brief. "News says you're missing. Board calling emergency meeting tomorrow. What's happening?" Ethan hesitated, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Could he trust Adam? Clara had said to trust no one. Before he could decide, another message appeared. "Police asking about cabin security logs. Say you might have a missing child with you." "Do you?" The phone slipped from Ethan's suddenly numb fingers. They were moving faster than he'd anticipated, already framing him as a kidnapper. How long before his face and Lily's were splashed across every screen in America? A soft knock at the door froze them both. "Housekeeping," called a woman's voice. Ethan frowned. "Housekeeping at midnight?" "We don't need anything," he called back, signaling Lily to stay silent. "Sorry to disturb, sir," the voice continued. "But there's an issue with the room payment." "I paid cash, for 3 nights," Ethan replied, moving silently to position himself between the door and Lily. A pause. Then, "There seems to be a discrepancy. If you could just open the door." Ethan's gaze fell on the bathroom window, small but large enough for Lily to fit through. He grabbed their bags, motioning for her to follow him. In the bathroom, he boosted her through the window first, then squeezed through himself, scraping his shoulders on the frame. They ran through the back alley, past overflowing dumpsters and abandoned shopping carts. Behind them, Ethan heard the distinctive sound of a door being forced open. They spent the night in an all-night diner, huddled in a corner booth under the flickering fluorescent lights. Lily picked at a plate of pancakes while Ethan watched the street through the grimy windows. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a gentle smile, brought them extra coffee and hot chocolate without being asked. "You two okay?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. "Just passing through," Ethan replied, the lie becoming familiar. "Mighty cold night to be traveling with a little one," she observed, looking at Lily with motherly concern. "Especially with all those police cars racing around." Ethan's head snapped up. "Police cars?" The waitress nodded, refilling his cup. "Been going past all night? Something about that awful fire up in Haber? Found some poor child's remains, they say." She lowered her voice. "Though Margaret down at the beauty salon says her cousin works at the medical examiner's office, and they're having trouble identifying the body. Too badly burned, apparently." Ethan's gaze flicked to Lily, who was stirring her hot chocolate with mechanical precision, her face expressionless. She'd heard every word. "Terrible business," the waitress continued, oblivious to their tension. "First, that Sunnyside teacher goes missing last month. What was her name? Elena something, and now this. That place has always given me the creeps." Ethan's interest sharpened. "A teacher went missing?" "Substitute, I think. Young woman, very pretty. Left her apartment one night and never came back. Police said she just up and moved without telling anyone, but she left all her things behind. Strange, don't you think?" When they left the diner at dawn, the city was waking up. News vans had gathered outside the police station, and Ethan caught a glimpse of Sheriff Hansen giving a press conference on a television in a store window. The sound was muted, but the crawl at the bottom of the screen made his blood run cold. Billionaire Ethan Caldwell sought for questioning in child abduction case. Next to his corporate headshot was a school photo of Lily, the same one from the news report about the fire. "They're saying I'm alive now," Lily whispered, her small hand finding his. "Why would they do that if they wanted me dead?" It was a good question, one that had been troubling Ethan too. If Mercer and his associates had gone to the trouble of staging Lily's death, why publicly contradict themselves by reporting her abducted? Unless they needed her back. Unless whatever they'd been doing to her at Sunnyside was too important to lose. The realization came with horrifying clarity. They didn't just want Lily silenced. They wanted her returned to their control. As they walked through the awakening city, Ethan felt eyes on them from every direction. Security cameras, pedestrians, police cars cruising slowly past. They couldn't stay in the open. But where could they go? The answer came unexpectedly. A newspaper dispensary on the corner carried the morning edition, his face prominently displayed on the front page. But it was the smaller headline below that caught his attention. "Former Sunnyside employee alleges abuse, disappears before testimony." Elena Reyes, 28, scheduled to testify about irregularities at Sunnyside Children's Home, has not been seen since Tuesday night. Ethan fed coins into the machine with shaking hands. The article mentioned an address, Elena's apartment, where she'd last been seen. It was their only lead, their only possible ally in a city closing in around them. "We need to find this woman," he told Lily, folding the newspaper under his arm. "She might know what Clara was trying to stop." Lily nodded, her face solemn beyond her years. "If they haven't found her first." The words hung between them as they merged into the morning commuters, two shadows moving against the tide, carrying secrets that powerful men would kill to protect. Elena Reyes lived, or had lived, in a modest apartment complex on the west side of Salt Lake City. The building was a weathered three-story structure with peeling paint and sagging balconies, overlooking a strip mall and a busy intersection. Yellow police tape still sealed her door, the plastic fluttering slightly in the draft from a hallway window. Ethan and Lily stood at the end of the corridor, watching the apartment from a distance. It was mid-morning, the building quiet with most residents at work. Lily had traded Clara's distinctive blue coat for a nondescript gray hoodie Ethan had purchased from a thrift store along the way, her auburn hair tucked beneath a knit cap. Still, Ethan felt exposed, vulnerable, certain that someone would recognize them at any moment. "We can't just walk in," he whispered, eyeing the police tape. "There might be cameras or neighbors watching." Lily pointed to the fire escape visible through the hallway window. "That goes past her window." Miss Elena always kept her bathroom window unlocked because the lock was broken. She told us once when she visited Sunnyside. Ethan hesitated. Breaking into a crime scene would add another charge to the growing list against him. But what choice did they have? The fire escape rattled ominously as they climbed, metal groaning beneath their weight. Ethan kept expecting shouts from below, police sirens, the crack of gunfire. Instead, there was only the ambient noise of the city, traffic, distant conversations, the hum of existence continuing despite their private nightmare. The bathroom window, as Lily had predicted, slid open with minimal effort. The apartment beyond was dark and still, the air stale with the particular emptiness of a space abruptly abandoned. Dust motes danced in the thin shafts of light penetrating the closed blinds, giving the scene an otherworldly, suspended quality. "Stay close to me," Ethan whispered, helping Lily through the window. Elena Reyes had lived simply. The furnishings were sparse but carefully chosen, bookshelves overflowing with worn paperbacks, a threadbare couch brightened with colorful throw pillows, walls decorated with framed photographs of landscapes. No family photos, Ethan noted. No evidence of a partner or children. The police had clearly searched the place thoroughly. Drawers stood partially open. Papers were stacked haphazardly on surfaces, the cushions on the couch slightly askew. Whatever they had been looking for, they had been methodical in their hunt. "What are we looking for?" Lily asked. Her voice hushed in the stillness. "Anything connecting Elena to Clara," Ethan replied. "Or to Sunnyside. Something the police might have missed." They searched carefully, conscious of leaving no trace of their presence. In the kitchen, magnets held takeout menus and utility bills to the refrigerator. The bedroom was neat, the bed made as if Elena had expected to return to it. The closet contained modest, practical clothing, a teacher's wardrobe on a substitute's salary. It was Lily who found it. A loose floorboard beneath the bed revealed when she dropped to her knees to retrieve a fallen pen. The small compartment contained a single item, a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with neat, cramped handwriting. "Ethan," she called softly, holding it up. He took it with trembling hands, flipping through quickly. Dates, times, observations. Elena had been documenting something for months, and there, repeated throughout, was Clara's name. January 15th, C visited again, asked about Protocol 7. Suspect she knows more than she's saying. February 3rd, 3 more children transferred to Special Care Wing. Only MW and RM have access. C increasingly agitated. March 10th, C convinced something happening in basement lab. Security increased. Children returning with unexplained marks, behavioral changes. April 22nd, C showed me medication vials, non-standard labeling. Children report nightmares, headaches after vitamins. And then, the final entry, dated just days before Clara's accident. May 17th, C has proof. Says going to board tomorrow. Showed me files on flash drive. God help us all if she's right. RM will destroy everything if cornered. RM Richard Mercer. MW would be Margaret Whitman, the Sunnyside director. And C, Clara. His sister had been building a case, gathering evidence of whatever horrors were occurring at Sunnyside. And she had shared that evidence with Elena Reyes, who had subsequently disappeared. A sound outside the apartment door froze them both. Footsteps approaching, a key in the lock. Ethan grabbed Lily, clamping a hand over her mouth to stifle her frightened gasp, and pulled her into the closet. Through the slats in the door, they watched as a man in a police uniform entered the apartment. But it wasn't a routine check. The officer moved with purpose, directly to the desk where he began rifling through papers. He wasn't cataloging or securing evidence, he was searching just as they had been. The officer's radio crackled to life. "Any sign of them at the Reyes apartment?" The man pressed his comm button. "Negative. Place is clear. No evidence they've been here." "Keep looking," the voice commanded. "Caldwell can't have vanished. Every cop in the state is looking for him and the girl." "Copy that," the officer replied, continuing his search. Ethan and Lily remained motionless in the closet, barely breathing. The minutes stretched like hours as the officer methodically went through the apartment. He approached the bedroom, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. A phone rang, the officer's cell. He answered it abruptly. "Yeah? No, nothing here." "Wait, seriously? The lake house again? I'm on my way." He left as quickly as he'd come, the apartment door clicking shut behind him. Ethan waited a full 5 minutes before daring to emerge from the closet, Elena's journal clutched tightly in his hand. "They're still watching the cabin," he whispered. "They think we might go back." Lily's face was pale in the dim light. "What do we do now?" Ethan tucked the journal into his jacket. "We need to find somewhere safe to read this properly. And then..." He hesitated, the weight of their situation pressing down on him. "Then we need to find out what happened to Elena Reyes, and what Clara discovered that got her killed." As they prepared to leave via the fire escape, Lily paused by Elena's desk, her attention caught by a small framed photo partially hidden behind a stack of books. She pulled it out, her breath catching. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. The photo showed 2 women standing in front of a lake, Clara and a woman who must be Elena, their arms around each other's shoulders, laughing into the camera. They were standing on the dock of his lake house. They weren't just colleagues, Ethan realized, studying the intimate pose, the matching expressions. They were together. "Miss Elena came to the lake sometimes," Lily said softly. "Miss Clara said it was their special place where they could be themselves without hiding." Another piece of the puzzle fell into place: why Clara had visited Sunnyside so often, why Elena had risked everything to continue Clara's investigation after her death. It hadn't been just professional concern, it had been love. The revelation made their mission more personal, more urgent. Clara and Elena had died, or disappeared, trying to expose the truth. The journal might hold the key to finishing what they started. As they slipped out of the apartment and back onto the anonymous streets of Salt Lake City, Lily's small hand found Ethan's. "Miss Clara used to say something," she whispered, "when things were scary at Sunnyside." "What was that?" Ethan asked, keeping his face down as they passed a patrol car. Lily's voice was barely audible, a ghost of sound in the winter air. "No one dies for real if someone still needs the truth." The word sent a chill down Ethan's spine, the same haunting certainty that had colored all of Lily's statements. As if she knew things no child should know, had seen things no child should see. And perhaps she had. The mysteries of Sunnyside, of Protocol 7, of whatever had happened in that basement lab, were still unfolding around them, a dark tapestry of secrets that powerful men would kill to protect. Behind them, a black SUV pulled away from the curb, following at a discreet distance. The hunt was just beginning. They found refuge in the public library downtown, a cavernous marble building where they could disappear among the stacks. The grand reading room with its soaring ceilings and hushed atmosphere offered both anonymity and safety. No one looked twice at the man and child huddled in a corner alcove, surrounded by books as if working on a school project. Ethan spread Elena's journal before them, his hands trembling slightly as he turned the pages. Each entry revealed more of the horrific picture: children at Sunnyside being used as test subjects for experimental medications developed by Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. Protocol 7, whatever it was, appeared to involve neurological testing on orphaned children with no family connections to protest their treatment. The children who disappeared were either casualties of the testing or, if successful subjects, moved to another facility for more intensive studies. "Did they give you these medicines?" Ethan asked softly, showing Lily a page where Elena had sketched various pill shapes and colors. Lily nodded, pointing to a small blue hexagon. "Those made the dreams start. And these white ones," she indicated a round tablet, "made my head hurt so bad I couldn't see right for days." The clinical detachment with which she described her suffering made Ethan's stomach clench. No child should speak of pain with such resigned familiarity. "What dreams?" he asked. Lily's eyes took on that faraway look he'd noticed before, gazing not at him but through him, as if seeing something beyond the physical realm. "Strange ones." About places I've never been. About people who died before I was born. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes I dream about what's going to happen before it does. A chill ran through Ethan. Was that what Protocol 7 was testing? Some kind of pharmaceutical enhancement of cognitive abilities? The ethical violations alone were staggering, let alone the legal ramifications if children were being harmed, or worse. That's why Dr. Mercer was so interested in me, Lily continued, tracing patterns on the table's wooden surface. He said I was receptive when the others weren't. He made me take more pills than anyone else. The library's overhead lights flickered momentarily, casting strange shadows across Lily's small face. For an instant, she looked older, haggard, as if the weight of her experiences had physically aged her. Then the light stabilized and she was just a child again, a frightened, traumatized child caught in a nightmare of adult creation. As Ethan turned to the final pages of the journal, a folded note fell out. The paper was different, higher quality, with a Caldwell Pharmaceuticals watermark in the corner. Clara's handwriting covered the page in a hurried scrawl, far different from her usual precise script. Elena, I've confirmed everything. Protocol 7 isn't just testing cognitive enhancement. It's specifically targeting precognitive abilities. Mercer believes certain children have latent psychic potential that can be activated with the right neurochemical triggers. The results are unpredictable, dangerous, but when successful, God help us, I've seen the data. Lily Miller is his crown jewel. Her test results are off the charts, but the side effects are catastrophic. The other successful subjects have all developed serious neurological damage. 2 have died already. Mercer is covering it up. I'm taking everything to the board tomorrow. If anything happens to me, the backup drive is where we watch the sunrise. Tell my brother. He'll know what to do. I love you. C. Ethan's hands shook so violently that the paper fluttered to the table. Precognitive abilities? It sounded insane, impossible. Yet wasn't that exactly what Lily had demonstrated? Knowing to find him at the lake house? Knowing Elena's window would be unlocked? The strange, knowing quality to her statements? The sunrise, he murmured, mind racing. Clara and Elena had spent time at the lake house. Where had they watched the sunrise? The dock, Lily said, as if reading his thoughts. They always watched from the dock. Miss Clara said it was the best place to see new beginnings. Ethan's gaze snapped to her face. How did you know what I was thinking? Lily's expression remained placid, but her eyes held that unsettling wisdom. I just knew. Like I knew you wouldn't read the letter until you were ready. She reached into her pocket and withdrew the aged envelope she'd been carrying, the one Ethan had placed in his pocket at the cabin but never opened. I think you're ready now, she said softly. With trembling fingers, Ethan broke the seal on the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, dog-eared and worn as if frequently handled. It showed Lily and Clara standing in a field of sunflowers, the golden blooms towering over the child's small frame. Clara's arm was around Lily's shoulders, both of them smiling broadly at the camera. On the back, in Clara's neat handwriting, "Protect the light that remains." The date stamp in the corner was from 3 months before Clara's fatal accident. I don't understand, Ethan whispered, staring at the photo. How did Clara know you? Why didn't she ever mention you to me? She was trying to protect both of us, Lily replied. Dr. Mercer was already suspicious of her. She said knowledge was dangerous. That's why she divided everything up. You got me. Elena got the evidence. That way, if they caught one person, they wouldn't get everything. The strategic thinking was pure Clara. Meticulous, careful, always 3 steps ahead. But the implications were staggering. Clara hadn't just stumbled onto Mercer's experiments. She'd been actively working to expose them, to save the children, to save Lily, specifically. We need to find that backup drive, Ethan said decisively, tucking the photo into his pocket. It must be hidden somewhere on the dock at the lake house. We can't go back there, Lily reminded him, fear flickering in her eyes. The police are watching. No, but Adam Barrett might be able to. Ethan pulled out the prepaid phone, hesitating before dialing. Could he trust Adam? Clara's warning echoed in his mind. Trust no one. But they were running out of options, out of time. The evidence they needed was at the lake house, and they couldn't retrieve it themselves. Who is Adam Barrett? Lily asked. My head of security. He was Clara's friend too. Ethan stared at the phone. I hope, we can trust him. As his finger hovered over the call button, a breaking news alert flashed on a nearby computer terminal. An elderly man had been checking his email, but the headline that popped up froze both Ethan and Lily in their tracks. Caldwell Pharmaceuticals board member found dead in apparent suicide. Ethan abandoned the phone and moved closer, reading over the man's shoulder. Jonathan Hayes, 62, a founding board member of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals and close family friend of the Caldwells, had been found dead in his home that morning. Police were investigating, but initial reports suggested suicide. Uncle John, Ethan whispered, his voice cracking. Hayes had been his father's best friend, a surrogate uncle to him and Clara after their parents' deaths. He'd been on the board for 30 years, with access to every level of the company. He was helping Miss Clara, Lily whispered, her face pale. He's the one who got her access to the basement at Sunnyside. She said he was the only one on the board she could trust. Another piece clicked into place. If Hayes had been helping Clara investigate Mercer, his suicide took on a much darker implication. They were running out of allies. Back at their table, Ethan forced himself to think. The lake house was being watched. Hayes was dead. Elena was missing. The only person left who might help them was Adam. But if he made that call, he'd be placing yet another life at risk. The letter from Clara remained on the table between them, her final message both a revelation and a responsibility. Ethan picked it up, reading it again. The words seemed to burn into his mind, illuminating the darkness that had consumed his sister's final months. She died trying to save you, he said to Lily, the truth of it finally fully sinking in. And others like you. Lily nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. That's why I had to find you, to finish what she started. In that moment, staring at his sister's handwriting, seeing Clara's face in the photograph with Lily, Ethan felt something shift within him. The fear and uncertainty that had been his constant companion since finding Lily in the cabin were still present, but now they were joined by something else. Resolve. Clara had died for this. Hayes had died for this. Elena might be dead too. He wouldn't let their sacrifices be in vain. We're going back to the lake house, he decided, gathering Elena's journal and Clara's letter. Tonight. Whatever evidence Clara hid there, we need to find it. It's the only way to stop Mercer and save the other children. Lily's expression was solemn, wise beyond her years. They'll be waiting for us. Yes, Ethan agreed, determination hardening his voice. But they don't know what we know now. And they don't know what you can do. Darkness had fallen by the time they approached Deer Creek Lake, the winter night settling around the mountains like a shroud. Ethan had abandoned their rental car miles back, trading it for an ancient pickup truck purchased with cash from a farmer who asked no questions. The truck's headlights cut weakly through the swirling snow as they navigated the back roads, avoiding the main highway where police checkpoints had been established. Lily sat silently beside him, her small face illuminated by the dashboard glow. She hadn't spoken much since they'd left the city, but her presence filled the cab with an almost palpable tension. Twice she had warned him to turn off the main road moments before police cruisers appeared. Once she'd insisted they pull over and wait, only for a state patrol helicopter to pass overhead minutes later. Her abilities, whatever they truly were, had kept them one step ahead of capture all day. There's a patrol car at the main entrance to the lake road, she said suddenly, breaking the silence, and 2 men watching from the trees near your dock. Ethan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Can you see them? From here? They were still miles from the lake. She shook her head. Not exactly. I just know. Her voice was matter-of-fact, resigned to the strangeness of her own mind. It happens more since they increased my dosage. Sometimes it's like watching a movie of what's going to happen, and sometimes it's just knowing. The casual way she described her extraordinary perception made Ethan's heart ache. What had been done to this child? What price had she paid for these abilities? "We'll approach from the north side," he decided, turning onto an unmarked Forest Service road. "There's an old maintenance trail that comes out near the boat launch. We can cross the ice to reach the dock." "The ice won't hold both of us," Lily said quietly. "It's too thin in the middle." Ethan glanced at her, a chill that had nothing to do with the winter night creeping up his spine. "Then I'll go alone. You can wait in the truck." "No." Her voice was suddenly firm. "We have to stay together. We'll find another way." They abandoned the truck a mile from the lake, continuing on foot through the dense pine forest. The snow had stopped falling, but the clouds hung low and heavy, obscuring the moon and stars. Their breath formed ghostly plumes in the freezing air as they picked their way carefully through the underbrush. Ethan carried a small backpack with supplies, flashlight, rope, tools to pry up dockboards if necessary. Lily moved beside him like a shadow, her footsteps eerily silent on the snow-covered ground. Despite her small size, she navigated the difficult terrain without complaint, ducking under branches and scrambling over fallen logs with a determination that belied her years. When they reached the edge of the trees, the lake stretched before them like a vast white plain, its frozen surface reflecting the dull glow of security lights from distant cabins. Ethan's own property sat dark and silent 200 yards away, its windows blank and lightless. From their position, they could just make out the silhouette of the dock extending into the lake. "There," Lily whispered, pointing. "Two men. One at the end of your dock, one by the boathouse." Ethan squinted through the darkness. At first he saw nothing. Then a brief orange glow, a cigarette being lit, revealed a figure huddled at the far end of his dock. The second man was harder to spot, a darker shadow against the dark boathouse wall, but there. "I need to get to the dock without them seeing me," Ethan murmured, scanning the shoreline for options. Lily tugged at his sleeve, pointing to a nearby shed, the property of his nearest neighbor, a weekend fisherman who wouldn't return until spring. "There's a canoe inside. We could use that to reach the dock from behind." "How do you know there's a canoe?" She just looked at him, those old soul eyes glimmering in the darkness. Breaking into the shed was surprisingly easy. The padlock was old and rusted, giving way with minimal effort. Inside, as Lily had predicted, was a small aluminum canoe, dusty with disuse. Together, they carried it to the water's edge, setting it down as quietly as possible on the thin ice near the shore. "Stay here," Ethan whispered, helping Lily conceal herself in the underbrush. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, take the truck keys and go. Find someone to trust." Her small hand caught his coat sleeve, holding him with surprising strength. "You'll come back," she said with that eerie certainty. "But you'll be different." Before he could ask what she meant, she released him, melting back into the shadows beneath the pine trees. The canoe made almost no sound as Ethan paddled it across the still water. Near shore, the ice had broken up, allowing silent passage. He kept to the darkest parts of the lake, using the cabin shadows to mask his approach. When he reached the far side of the dock, he secured the canoe to a piling and carefully climbed up, wincing as the aged wood creaked beneath his weight. The guard at the dock's end shifted and Ethan froze. After a moment, the man resumed his restless pacing, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets against the cold. His attention was focused toward the main road, watching for approach from that direction. Ethan crawled forward on his stomach, feeling along the worn wooden planks for any sign of Clara's hiding place. What had she meant by, "where we watched the sunrise"? The entire dock faced east. The whole thing caught the morning light. Then he remembered. There was a particular spot where Clara and Elena had often sat, a wide plank with a poetic inscription Clara had carved into it as a teenager. "Each dawn brings new light." She'd been obsessed with sunrises after their parents' deaths, finding hope in the daily miracle of darkness giving way to light. He found the plank, his fingers tracing the worn letters in the darkness. The wood here felt different, slightly newer, as if it had been removed and replaced. Heart pounding, Ethan worked his fingernails under the edge of the board, lifting it carefully. There, nestled in a waterproof bag taped to the underside of the plank, was a small flash drive. The guard's footsteps suddenly halted. "Hey, who's there?" Ethan grabbed the flash drive and rolled sideways, dropping off the dock into the freezing water just as a flashlight beam swept over the spot where he'd been. The cold hit him like a physical blow, driving the air from his lungs. He fought the instinct to gasp, knowing the sound would give him away, and forced himself to swim silently beneath the dock. Above, heavy footsteps moved urgently toward where he'd been. A radio crackled to life. "Perimeter check. Thought I saw something on the east dock, going to investigate." "Copy that. Backup on the way." Ethan's lungs screamed for air as he clung to the barnacle-encrusted pilings beneath the dock, the flash drive clutched in his frozen fingers. When the footsteps receded slightly, he allowed himself to surface in the shadows, drawing a silent breath of precious air. He had the drive, but now he was trapped. The cold water was already numbing his extremities, the deadly effects of hypothermia only minutes away. The canoe was too exposed. If he tried to reach it, he'd be spotted immediately. And Lily was waiting, alone and vulnerable. In that desperate moment, as the freezing water sapped his strength and his options dwindled to none, Ethan felt a clarity he'd never experienced before. Clara had died for this. Hayes had died for this. Who knew how many children had suffered and died? If revealing the truth meant sacrificing himself, wasn't that a price worth paying? For the first time in his privileged life, Ethan Caldwell found himself facing a choice where his money, his name, his power meant nothing. All that mattered was whether he had the courage to do what was right, regardless of the personal cost. "If the world wants to erase you," he had told Lily back at the cabin, "then it'll have to go through me." Now, shivering in the dark water beneath his dock, the evidence clutched in his hand and armed men closing in, Ethan made his choice. He would draw them away from Lily, give her a chance to escape with the flash drive. It was the only way. With a deep breath, he pushed away from the dock, striking out toward the open water where he'd be visible. Instantly, shouts erupted. Flashlight beams crisscrossed the lake surface, finding his struggling form. "Freeze! Police!" Ethan kept swimming, angling away from where Lily was hidden. Behind him, he heard the sound of boots on the dock, a boat engine starting up. They were coming for him. Good. Every second they focused on him was another second for Lily to get away. The cold was like fire in his veins now, his movements growing sluggish. Still, he forced himself onward. The flash drive clenched in his fist. 20 more yards and he'd be too far from shore for them to risk shooting. Maybe he could make it to the far side, find Lily, complete their escape. A spotlight suddenly illuminated the water around him, turning night to harsh, artificial day. A bullhorn crackled to life. "Ethan Caldwell, stop immediately or we will open fire." He hesitated, treading water. Death in the freezing lake or capture by Mercer's men. Neither option offered much hope. He glanced toward the shore where he'd left Lily, praying she'd had the sense to run. Instead, he saw her small figure standing on the ice at the lake's edge, her arms raised as if reaching for him. Even from this distance, he could feel the intensity of her gaze. And somehow, impossibly, he heard her voice in his mind. "Trust me. Trust me." The words echoed in Ethan's mind with startling clarity, though Lily's lips hadn't moved. The spotlight's harsh glare created a halo around her small figure at the shoreline, her arms still extended toward him. Behind him, the police boat's engine growled closer, cutting through the thin ice at the lake's center. "Last warning, Caldwell," the bullhorn crackled. "Surrender now." Time seemed to slow as Ethan treaded water, his body growing number by the second. The flash drive felt like an anchor in his hand, pulling him down into the dark depths. In that suspended moment, he made his decision. He turned away from the approaching boat and began swimming toward Lily with the last of his strength. Every stroke was agony, his frozen muscles screaming in protest. The spotlight followed him and he heard shouts of alarm as officers realized his intent. "Stop! "The ice won't hold you," someone yelled from the boat. They were right. The center of the lake where Ethan swam was liquid, but ahead, where Lily stood, a sheet of ice extended from the shore. Too thin to support an adult's weight, but perhaps just solid enough for a desperate man to distribute his weight and crawl across. As he reached the edge of the ice, Ethan stretched out flat, spreading his arms and legs to disperse his weight. The frozen surface creaked ominously beneath him. Behind, the police boat had stopped, unable to follow into the shallower, ice-covered waters without risking damage. "Lily, run!" he shouted, inching forward on the treacherous surface. "Get away from here!" But she remained motionless, her silhouette small and determined against the dark trees. As Ethan crawled closer, he could see her face, calm, focused, her eyes reflecting the spotlight with an almost supernatural intensity. She wasn't afraid. She was concentrating. Crack. The ice beneath Ethan's right arm gave way, plunging it into the freezing water. He gasped, struggling to maintain his balance on the fracturing surface. 20 more feet to shore. 15. The spotlight still trained on him, revealing the spreading network of cracks radiating outward from his body. 10 feet from shore, the ice surrendered completely. Ethan plunged into the water with a startled cry, the cold shocking what little warmth remained from his system. He flailed desperately, struggling to keep the flash drive above water as his heavy winter clothes dragged him down. Then, impossibly, he felt it, a solid surface beneath his feet where there should be none. A submerged log? A sandbar? Whatever it was, it provided just enough support for him to push upward, his head breaking the surface once more. Lily hadn't moved, but her expression had changed. Intense concentration etched lines around her eyes and mouth that no 8-year-old should possess. Blood trickled from her nose, but she didn't seem to notice. Her gaze locked on Ethan as if physically holding him above water through sheer force of will. With a final desperate lunge, Ethan hurled the flash drive toward shore. It landed at Lily's feet, but she didn't even glance down, her focus unwavering. "Take it and run," he gasped, struggling against the grip of the freezing lake. "No," she said, the single word carrying clearly across the water. "Not without you." Behind him, officers were deploying a small rubber raft from the police boat, preparing to come after him. On the far shore, more flashlights appeared as additional units arrived at the cabin. They were running out of time. With one final Herculean effort, Ethan lunged forward, catching hold of a fallen tree branch extending into the water. He pulled himself toward shore inch by agonizing inch, the ice breaking beneath him as he moved, until finally his feet found purchase on the rocky lake bottom. He staggered to the shore, collapsing beside Lily. His entire body trembled violently, his clothes frozen stiff, his face a ghastly blue-white in the spotlight's glare. "How?" he began, but couldn't form more words through his chattering teeth. Lily knelt beside him, her small face grave as she wiped the blood from her nose with her sleeve. "I told you," she whispered. "The medicine made things happen. In my head. Sometimes. Outside too." Had she somehow influenced the ice? Created that mysterious footing when he was sinking? It seemed impossible, yet he couldn't deny what he'd experienced. The implications of Protocol 7 were more terrifying and more powerful than he'd imagined. "We have to move," Lily urged, her voice stronger than her fragile appearance suggested. She picked up the flash drive, tucking it securely into her pocket, then tugged at Ethan's frozen sleeve. "They're coming." Indeed, shouts and the crashing of undergrowth announced officers approaching from multiple directions. Ethan struggled to his feet, swaying dangerously as hypothermia clouded his thinking. He wouldn't make it far in this condition. Even if they escaped the immediate pursuit, he would freeze to death in the winter night without dry clothes and shelter. "Lily," he managed through blue lips. "You need to go. Take the drive and find help. I'll slow them down." Her eyes flashed with something like anger. "No, I'm not leaving you." She grabbed his frozen hand, her small fingers surprisingly warm against his skin. Miss Clara didn't give up. Miss Elena didn't give up. You don't get to give up either." The simple, fierce loyalty in her voice penetrated Ethan's fog of cold and despair. This child, this extraordinary, damaged, brave child, had endured horrors he could barely imagine, yet still stood tall, refusing to abandon him. How could he do any less for her? Drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed, Ethan straightened. "Which way?" Lily pointed without hesitation toward a barely visible trail leading away from the lake into the dense forest. They plunged into the darkness just as the first officers reached the shoreline behind them. The forest closed around them like a protective embrace, ancient pines blocking the worst of the wind and concealing them from searching spotlights. Lily moved with surprising confidence, leading Ethan along game trails too narrow for vehicles to follow. Behind them, shouted commands and barking dogs announced the pursuit, but the sounds grew fainter as they pushed deeper into the wilderness. After 20 minutes of desperate flight, they stumbled upon an unexpected sanctuary, a small hunting cabin, long abandoned judging by the sagging roof and boarded windows, but still standing against the winter elements. Ethan broke the rusted padlock with numb hands and they tumbled inside, pulling the door shut behind them. The interior was musty and cold, but blessedly dry. An ancient wood stove stood in one corner, beside a stack of long-forgotten firewood. Ethan fumbled with frozen fingers to light a fire while Lily explored the single room, finding moth-eaten blankets in a trunk beneath the cabin's only window. "You need dry clothes," she said practically, wrapping him in blankets as the first flames caught in the stove. "Your lips are still blue." The cabin had been abandoned in haste sometime in the past. Tattered flannel shirts and worn jeans still hung from pegs on the wall. They were dusty and smelled of mothballs, but they were dry. Ethan changed awkwardly, his frozen limbs refusing to coordinate properly, while Lily turned her back with solemn courtesy. As warmth slowly returned to his body, bringing with it the painful pins and needles of circulation restored to frozen extremities, Ethan's mind cleared enough to assess their situation. They had the flash drive, Clara's evidence against Mercer and his experiments. But they were also deeper in trouble than ever before, now officially fugitives with the full force of law enforcement searching for them. "What do we do with this now?" he asked, gesturing to the flash drive Lily had placed carefully on the cabin's rickety table. "We can't exactly walk into a police station." Lily sat cross-legged before the stove, her face illuminated by the dancing flames. The firelight softened her features, momentarily restoring the innocent child that should have been, before Sunnyside and Protocol 7 and all that followed. "Miss Clara had a plan," she said softly. "She always had a plan." "What plan?" Ethan asked, wrapping a blanket tighter around his shoulders as violent shivers continued to rack his body. Lily looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the fire's glow. She said if something happened to her, if the evidence needed to come out, there was one person who could help, someone even Dr. Mercer couldn't silence. "Who?" "The governor's wife," Lily replied. "Miss Jennifer Winters. She was Miss Clara's roommate in college. Miss Clara said she's the most stubborn, honest person she ever knew." A ghost of a smile touched Lily's lips. "And she hates bullies." Sometimes the most powerful act isn't saving a life. It's seeing someone before they disappear. Ethan Caldwell lost everything he thought mattered, his fortune, his reputation, his carefully constructed world of privilege, yet gained something far more precious, the chance to finish what his sister started, to protect a child who had been erased by those with power. Would you have had the courage to walk away from everything you knew, to stand against an entire system for someone you just met? Or would you have turned away, choosing comfort over truth? In our darkest moments, we discover what truly matters. Not the wealth we accumulate or the status we achieve, but the lives we touch and the wrongs we choose to right. Lily Miller was declared dead by those who wanted her silenced, but one man refused to let her light be extinguished. As Ethan learned, sometimes the most important people in our lives are those who show us who we truly are and what we're willing to fight for. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and follow our channel for more powerful narratives that illuminate the human spirit. Your comments not only help our community grow, but remind us all that stories of courage and sacrifice still matter in this world. What would you have done in Ethan's place? Let us know in the comments below, and thank you for being part of this journey with us.